This is Pre-Calculus Concept 10b. We're going to talk about the horizontal line test, and there are 4 boxes. We're going to start off with an example that leads to kind of a special situation we need to watch out for. So just like in the last video, we're going to ask you to find the inverse of a function. So I'm going to start by changing this to y equals. I'm going to swap my variables, and I get x equals y squared. And then I'm going to solve for my new y. Careful here that you should get plus or minus the square root of x. A lot of people forget about the plus or minus there. So here's a graph of what our inverse looks like. The positive square root is the top half of this graph, and the negative square root is the bottom half of this graph. But an interesting result here is that we actually have a solution that is not a function. Hopefully remember that to test that, we're going to do the vertical line test. And if I can come up with any vertical line that crosses the graph more than once, then what I'm looking at is not a function. So what I figured out here is that our original function, f of x equals x squared, actually has no inverse, because the inverse that I get is not a function. And this is something that often happens and we need to keep an eye out for. Luckily, there's a quick way of figuring out whether a function has an inverse, and that is the horizontal line test. Alright, so we're going to look at the horizontal line test, and it's a quick and easy way to tell whether a function has an inverse or not. So what we're going to look at is whether or not there's a horizontal line that crosses the graph more than once. If there is, then there is no inverse to that function. If there is no horizontal line that intersects the function at more than one point, then we say it does have an inverse that is a function. Another term we're going to use for this scenario where you have a function that does have an inverse is to call that function a one-to-one function. Okay, box 3 is an example. We're going to look at 5 different graphs and determine which of them have functions, which of them have inverse functions. The same way of asking that question would be which of the functions is one-to-one. So while this looks like 2 different questions, it's the same question. Alright, so again, all I'm going to do is apply the horizontal line test. In my first graph here, this is a semicircle. I can definitely draw a horizontal line that crosses more than once, so that has no inverse. If I look at my second graph, this is a reciprocal function, and no matter where I draw my horizontal line, I will never cross more than once, and so this one has an inverse. Next graph is a cubic function, obviously fails, so there's no inverse function for that one. Later on this year, we're going to look at sine and cosine graphs. This one definitely does not have an inverse, because I can definitely cross more than once. And then I have a different looking cubic function here that passes the horizontal line test, so this one has an inverse. So you can see that's a pretty easy test. Again, I'm looking for functions that pass the horizontal line test. Will never have a horizontal line cross more than once. Okay, box 4 is a you try. Which of the functions below is not one-to-one? Alright, so think about these. You should have a pretty good picture of each of these graphs in your head, and answer your best answer. Alright, doing a real quick sketch of each of these functions, I get the following 4 pictures. I'm again thinking of the horizontal line test, and there's only one graph here that's going to fail, and that is the graph of the absolute value